Okay, so today we're going to be learning about lines and angles and also about what transversals are and the angle relationships between them. Okay, so first, what is a line? The mathematical definition of a line is like a straight, well, it's a line. It's hard to give an explicit definition for line, but it's made up of an infinitely many number of points and extends in two directions forever. That's why the arrows are on the end point, on the ends of the line. It doesn't actually end. It just extends on forever, but pictures can't show that it extends forever, so they put arrows.
Okay, so what is a line segment? Well, like the name suggests, it's just part of a line, which means that it has endpoints and does not go on forever.
Okay, so types of lines. Parallel lines are lines or line segments, I guess, that will never intersect or like touch each other ever. So for example, in this picture, line L and line M are parallel. And you can tell they're parallel because they have these other arrows in the middle of the line, which is a symbol that indicates that they're parallel.
Intersecting lines are basically the opposite of parallel lines because they do cross each other. And perpendicular lines are a special type that intersect with each other at a 90-degree angle, at 4 90-degree angles.
And finally, a transversal is a line that that basically crosses two other parallel lines. So in this image, the black lines are parallel, and that red line would be a transversal because it crosses those two.
So line segments are named for their endpoints. So for example, the first one you have line segment AB, and lines are named by points on the line, or you might see like a tiny letter next to the line, designating its name. So the second picture would be line K, and then the third picture would be line segment XY, or YX. Either one would work. Okay, and you can also see the symbol for a line or like line segment is that like horizontal line above the letters.
Okay, so here's an example for you to identify. What type of lines are lines A and B? And you can type your answer in the chat. And to answer Shram's question, no, a ray is not a line. A ray consists of one endpoint, but then the other side extends on forever. Yeah, and the answer is parallel. And remember that parallel lines extend forever, or never touch. Parallel lines never touch each other. And you can see that lines A and B, they're pretty much the same distance apart at all times. So although they'll extend on forever, they'll never ever touch each other.
Okay, next question. What type of lines are lines D and A?
And yeah, transversals are a type of intersecting lines. So in this picture, line D would be a transversal. And yeah, transversals can also intersect parallel lines if they can be perpendicular too. But in this question, we're specifically asking about D and A. Okay, So what type of lines are C and A? And specifically, it's about C and A. Yes, C is a transversal though. Okay, so yeah. Lines C and A are intersecting. They aren't perpendicular because they don't intersect at a right angle, as you can see from the image.
All right. And last question, what types of lines are the lines C and D? Wow, you somehow predicted the question, Shriram.
And for this question, technically there are two answers, so you could type either of them in the chat.
All right, so the answer is intersecting, but so it can also be transversal because both lines C and D are transversals. Although I took the question to mean more like, what do lines C and D create like together? So then intersecting would be another right answer. It's not letting me go on.
No, there was a couple things down. Okay, so.
Oh, oops.
Yeah, that's okay though. Okay, so next we're gonna go over types of angles. So acute angles are angles that are less than 90 degrees, and obtuse angles are greater than 90 degrees, and right angles are exactly 90 degrees, and you can see them in these three images here.
You should probably write this down if you don't know it, because.
Oh yeah, and 180-degree angles are called straight angles, but they're not on here.
All right, so if anyone needs more time, speak up now. Otherwise, we're going to move on. Okay, so complementary and supplementary angles. Complementary angles are two angles that together add up to 90 degrees, while supplementary angles will add up to 180 degrees combined. So what type of angle does this image show? Type your answer in the chat. All right, good. They are supplementary angles. And also this 135-degree angle would be obtuse, while the 45-degree angle would be acute.
Okay, so naming angles. Angles are named by points on their lines and their vertex. So for example, the angle below would be angle ABC. Also, if you just have one angle like the picture shows, you can also just call them by their vertex, which is like the corner where they like stop. So this angle below could also be called angle B.
So if you have two intersecting lines, any two intersecting lines, there will be the angles directly across from each other are called vertical angles, and they are always congruent. So here you can see marked in red are vertical angles, and there's also another pair of vertical angles, which are like the obtuse angles in the picture. And this is something very important for problems later on.
Okay, finally, one more thing about angles before we move on to transversals. In a triangle, the three angles will always add up to 180 degrees. And this is true for any triangle. They'll always add up to 180 degrees. And this can help and also help a lot in problems.
All right. Example 1. Angle A and angle B are supplementary. If angle B equals 80 degrees, what is the measure of angle A? Shriram, to answer your question, the two terms are distinct because complementary is like you adding the angles together to get 90 degrees, while perpendicular is when two lines intersect at 90-degree angles. So they're like similar, but not the same thing. And good job, everyone. The answer is 100 degrees. Because angle A and angle B are supplementary, that means they add up to 180 degrees. And since we know that angle B is 80 degrees, angle A is 100 degrees. 180 minus 80 is 100.
Okay, for the second example, lines AB and line CD intersect at point E. Angle AEC is 10 degrees. What's the measure of angle BED? And if you can't visualize this question, the best thing to do is just to draw the lines and angles and see if you can spot a relationship, which we've discussed. Okay, so it looks like some of you all got it. The answer is 10 degrees. So first, the best way to look to do this problem is to draw it because it's hard to visualize it. So if you draw a line AB and then you draw a line CD, they have to cross at point A because it says they intersect at point E, sorry. Lines A, B, and CD will cross at point E. So this point E is like this middle point. Angle AEC is 10 degrees, and it's asking for the measure of angle BED. So if you look at this image, you can see that angle BED is directly across from angle AEC. And if you remember when we were talking about vertical angles, these two angles are called vertical angles, and they'll always be congruent. So BED is the same as AEC. So the answer is 10 degrees. And one thing that you may have accidentally done is that if you like switch the positions of the letter A and the letter B, or if you switch the positions of the letter C and the letter D, you might have gotten that angle AEC is like really, really wide when the question says that it's just 10 degrees. In that case, you can just ignore how wide it is and just pretend it's a narrow angle because you'll still get the same answer either way.
Okay, so moving on to transversals, we're going to explore them a bit more. So like we said before, transversal is the line that intersects two parallel lines. And the picture shows some of the many angles in a transversal, and they have a lot of relationships between them, which lets you figure out like how many degrees one angle is based off another angle.
Okay, so this first relationship is called corresponding angles. Corresponding angles are basically pairs of angles that are in the same relative position and orientation on the transversal. So in this picture, you can see that the top half of the transversal is basically the same as the bottom half of the transversal. So the two blue angles, they're congruent because you can see that the top half is identical to the bottom half. So the blue angles would correspond to each other. They're the same, they're congruent. And also the red angles would also correspond to each other. And corresponding angles are always congruent. So the blue angle is always going to equal the other blue angle. And the red angle is always going to equal the other red angle.
I'll give you a little moment to draw the picture.
And yeah, red would also equal blue because they are vertical angles.
Okay, moving on to an example. If angle EGB equals 55 degrees, what is the measure of angle EHD? Good job. It looks like you all got what corresponding angles are. So EGB is 55 degrees and EHD is also 55 degrees because they are corresponding angles and corresponding angles are congruent.
Okay, this next relationship are called opposite angles. So in this picture, again, it's a transversal. The opposite angles are basically, okay, the green angles are called opposite interior angles because they're located between the parallel lines and which means they're on the interior, and they're on opposite sides of the transversal. The yellow angles are called opposite exterior angles because, again, they're on opposite sides of the transversal, but they're outside of the parallel lines, so they're called opposite exterior. And opposite angles are always congruent, just like the corresponding angles are always congruent. And another word for these angles are called alternate angles. You may see alternate interior, alternate exterior, or you could see opposite interior, opposite exterior, but they're the same thing. And we can wait a moment for you to write that down.
Can you tell me what congruent means?
Okay. Congruent means that the angles are equal. So that would mean that the yellow angle, if the yellow angles are congruent, then that means they have the same angle measure.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, let's move on. If you need me to turn back, then you can say so. But here's an example problem. If angle AGH equals 60 degrees, what is the measure of angle FHD?
And this problem may require a couple more steps than the previous example, so just know that.
Look at the problem closely, everyone. Like Amy said, there is another step to it. All right, here's a hint. Angle AGH and FHD are not alternate interior or alternate exterior angles. You need to find another angle that is congruent to AGH first. Okay, nice job, Shreyan. You got it. So there are a few different ways to approach this problem, but one way is to, you can see that AGH and GHD are alternate interior angles, and that means that they will be congruent. So that means that GHD equals 60 degrees. And then you can also see that GHD and FHD are supplementary. So that means that 180 minus GHD, which is 60, gets you the measure of FHD. 180 minus 60 equals 120 degrees.
I didn't really get that.
All right, I can go over again. Okay, so we know from the problem that AGH is 60 degrees. And then from what we learned in the previous slide, we know that two angles that are on opposite sides of the parallel lines, on opposite sides of the transversal, but are both inside the parallel lines. So that would be AGH and GHD. Those are called alternate interior angles or opposite interior angles. And those are congruent. So that lets us know that AGH is 60 and GHD is 60. Then you can see here that GHD and FHD are supplementary, meaning that they add up to 180. So then you just do 180 minus 60 to get the measure of FHD, which is 120. Does that make sense? Does anyone find like the supplementary part confusing, or the alternate interior angles confusing? Okay, then we're gonna move on.
Okay, and one more angle relationships are called same side angles. Same side angles are on the same side of the transversal. So in this picture, you can see that the two orange angles are both on the left side of the middle line. And you can also see that the pink angles are on the right side of the middle line. Also, the orange angles are both on the exterior. They're outside of the parallel lines. And the pink angles are in the interior. They're inside the parallel lines. So you can see from these images that one angle is small, one angle is big. And same side angles are always supplementary. In other words, they add up to 180 degrees. And also one more thing, when you're solving problems, you can use any of these relationships. So for example, in our previous problem, there was more than one way to solve it. The way we showed you used one angle relationship, but you could have used other angle relationships if you find some of these a little confusing.
All right, so the example problem. If angle EGB equals 55 degrees, what is the measure of angle FHD? Good job. The measure of angle FHD is 125 degrees. And so one way to go about solving this would be to see that they are same side exterior angles. That means that they are supplementary. And so 180 minus 55 degrees equals 125 degrees. FHD is 125 degrees. But just to give you an idea of another way you could have solved this, you can see that EGB and GHD are corresponding angles. And then from there, you know that GHD is 55 degrees and GHD is supplementary to FHD. So same, you get the same answer, but just a different process.
Okay, and this angle relationship is simpler than the other ones. Adjacent angles are located right next to each other. We've already used this several times in the past few problems. In transversals, they will always add up to 180 degrees because they're along a straight line, and straight lines are 180 degrees. And here's a quick note. All of the past angle relationships, like corresponding angles, alternate or opposite angles, and the same side angles, those relationships only occur if there is a transversal that intersects two parallel lines. If the lines aren't parallel, those relationships won't happen, basically. So yeah, that's just keep an eye out on that.
All right, don't get overwhelmed, everyone, with remembering the names of all these angles. All you have to do is try to figure out which ones are congruent, and if you can do that, you can basically solve these problems. This is something you would probably learn in 8th grade, so if you're getting it now, then that's great. Okay, yeah, and here's basically a simplified version. There are no names, but you still know that all the red angles are congruent, and all the green angles are congruent.
And also the red angle is supplementary to the green angle. So red plus green equals 180 degrees. Okay, so quick review. And it's okay if you don't remember the names. So what's more important is if you remember their relationship. So what type of angles are the red angles in the picture? And if you don't remember that, you can just put their relationship. It's no big deal if you can't remember the name. They are on the same side, but are they both on the exterior? Are they both on the interior?
So yeah, these angle names can be very confusing.
Yeah, they are kind of confusing. These are corresponding angles because you can see they're sort of in the same position on the top and bottom. So they're corresponding angles, but they are congruent or equal. And that's what you need to remember. You need to remember that these two angles are equal. Okay, so what type of angles are the green angles and what is their relationship? And if you don't remember the name, again, you don't need to type it, or if you know, you can type it, but mostly just try to remember their relationship. Yep, they are opposite angles. And what's their relationship? Okay, so it looks like most of you got it. Yep, the green angles are opposite interior angles because they're on opposite sides of the transversal, but they're in between the parallel lines, so they're on the interior. And opposite interior angles are always congruent or equal to each other. And finally, what type of angles are the orange angles and what's their relationship? And if you can't remember the name, just put the relationship. Yep, they are same side exterior. But what's their relationship? And no, they wouldn't make them corresponding because corresponding angles are sort of in like the same position on both the top and bottom, but the orange angles are in different positions on the top and bottom. And their relationship, they wouldn't be equal. The orange angles are in the picture to the far right. They would be same side exterior, and they would be supplementary, or in other words, they add up to equal 180 degrees. So yeah, that's just a quick review. Again, you don't need to, the names can be sometimes confusing. So just try to remember which ones are congruent and which ones are supplementary. That's what matters.
Right. So Amy, if you could put the link to the Jamboard in the chat.
Okay.
And also, can you see the Jamboard, everyone? Tell me in chat if you can. Okay, great. All right, so everyone make sure you are getting onto the Jamboard. I'll give you a little bit longer. All right, so go ahead and try this problem. The black lines are parallel to each other and the blue lines are also parallel. If the green angle measures exactly 30 degrees, what is the measure of the red angle? Use all of the angle relationships you've learned, or not all of them, but choose which ones are helpful. And then what you can do is go to the left, find the sticky note option on that bar. Oh wait, can you guys? Okay, yeah, you can. And then just type your answer. And please don't move the question around. All right, good job everyone who got 150. So there are obviously lots of approaches you can take, but one is you can see that this angle and this angle are equal because they are vertical angles. And then that previous angle and this one are equal because they are corresponding angles. And then these are also corresponding angles. And then you know that the last one I just drew and the red one we're trying to find are supplementary. So 180 minus 30 equals 150.
Okay, for the second example, find the value of x and assume that there's like a straight angle in this figure. And those expressions, those are the values of the angles, except in terms of x. Okay, so it looks like most of you all have gotten the right answer. But I'm still going to show it anyways in case there are some people who don't know how to solve it. So first, the values of the angles are 5x plus 1 and 3x plus 3. So the sum of these two angles has to, because the sum of these two angles has to be 180 degrees because they're supplementary. So we can write an equation, 5x plus 1 plus 3x plus 3 equals 180 degrees. Oh no. So then we can solve this equation. So 5x plus 3x is 8x, and then 1 plus 3 is 4. And that equals, okay, 176 degrees.
Am I messing you up? I'll just stop.
Oops. Or erase it. Okay, equals 100, oops. 107, oh shoot, sorry. 108, it equals, okay, 8 so equated 80 degrees. And then we can subtract 4 from both sides to get 8x equals 176. And then dividing by 8 on both sides, we get x equals 22. And that's our answer.
All right, next question. What is the maximum number of intersections that 6 line in a plane can have?
And a plane is just basically, you can just imagine a plane is a piece of paper. It's a 2D surface, and on that surface, there's like 6 lines. You may not know how to solve this if you don't already know how to solve it, but just think about it.
All right, so I know that probably wasn't a lot of time, but we should probably try and get to as many questions as we can. So I'll go ahead and explain this one. So you have 6 lines. It's a probability type question. So we have 6 lines, and when lines intersect, that an intersection is where 2 lines come together. So what you would do is 6, choose 2, and then basically, so on the numerator, you would have 6 factorial, and then on the denominator, you would have 2 factorial, and then you would also have 6 minus 2 factorial, which is basically 4 factorial. And then if you write it out larger, then you would have 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And then the back end of that, the 4 times 3 times 2, is cancels out with this. And then all you're left with is 6 times 5 divided by 2 times 1, which gets you the answer of 15 possible intersections.
Wait, Yolanda, have they learned about factorials yet?
I briefly went over it in the, what's it called? The placement test review.
Oh, okay.
But not like probability.
Oh, can I add an explanation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Better than mine.
That's all right. So the maximum number of intersections that any number of lines can have, in order for you to get the maximum number of intersections, it means that every one of the 6 lines has to intersect every one of the other 5 lines. So if each of the 6 lines, if each of those 6 lines intersects 5 other lines, that'd be 6 times 5 intersections. Except, like Yolanda said, a line, an intersection consists of 2 lines. So if we just do 6 times 5, we've actually counted one intersection twice, because we've counted this, if this is line A, and this is line B. If we just do 6 lines times 5 intersections, then that means we're counting if A intersects B and if B intersects A. But technically they're the same thing, so we have to divide by 2. And then that's basically the same thing Yolanda did, but that gives you 15.
And don't worry if that doesn't make sense. I think we will have a lesson on probability later on.
Okay, so here's a problem about transversals. Angle A is congruent to which other angles? And just write the name of the angle which it shows. And this has multiple answers, so write all however many answers there are. So I'm going to go quickly now. Yeah, it's the E and H, because you can see angle A is here and angle D is a vertical angle, which means it is the same, congruent to angle A. Angle D and angle H are corresponding angles, which means they are congruent. And finally, angle E is a vertical angle to H, which means that all four of these angles are congruent. Or yeah, all four.
All right, given that angle AZF is 80 degrees and angle ZXB is 130 degrees. Wait, I think, oh, never mind, I'm looking at it wrong. Then you should find angle EDY. Look at the problem a bit more carefully. I'll give you a hint that the angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees, and you should use a lot of vertical angles when you solve this problem.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead, or Yolanda, you can go ahead and explain it because I think we're running short on time.
All right, so we're given that angle AZF is 80 degrees, and from vertical angles, we know that angle YZX is also 80 degrees. And on here, you can see that angle BXZ and angle ZXY are supplementary, which tells you that this angle here is 50 degrees because 50 plus 130 equals 180. And then from that, the angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees. We already have 130. So that means that the last angle is here, which is 50 degrees. And then that is vertical. That is a vertical angle with EYD. So that means that this is also 50 degrees, which is your answer. All right, let's quickly move on to the last question we're going to be doing.
Or you can go to the one after that because this one's...
Okay, yeah, this is a good problem.
Okay, lines J and K are parallel. What is the measure of angle X? And again, remember that the three angles in a triangle will add up to 180 degrees. And for this one, there's actually an unnecessary component in the picture, so just saying. If no one puts an answer by 6 o'clock, I'm just going to go ahead and explain it. Okay, so to do this problem first, we're looking for angle X. And in order to find it, we need to find the measure of the other two angles in the triangle. So this angle here would be 50 degrees because this angle and this angle are supplementary. So this angle would be 50 degrees. this angle would be 60 degrees because, again, these two angles are supplementary, and 180 minus 120 is 60 degrees. So now we can find x because because 50 plus 60 plus x should equal 180 degrees because that's the sum of all the angles in a triangle. So we can solve for x and find that, x is equal to 70 degrees. That's our answer.
All right, so that wraps up today's lesson. Thank you everyone for coming. And you are free to go. If you have any questions, you can stay behind. And just be on the lookout for the quiz. And make sure you finish the quiz from the page. Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.